With all the success you've had, do you still face, are you currently facing any fears, or are there fears about the horizon?
Man, I have to give you amazing props. You're such a curious person about the people that you talk to. I love it. I love it,
Thank
man.
you.
The answer is, no, thank you. Are you kidding me? I've been on a ton of podcasts and people just same questions.
Welcome to the Idea Climbing Radio Show. Before the introduction, I'd like to start with a short story. In 2009, Simon Sinek delivered a TEDx talk in front of only 53 people. That talk was called The Why Talk, and it's been viewed over 100 million times and is one of the top 5 most viewed TED Talks of all time. One of those viewers was a dentist in New Mexico. When he heard it, he tried to figure out his own why. Why was he a dentist? Why was he struggling to find success? Why was life not what he imagined it to be? Unfortunately, no one had a system or created a tool to help him find his why. So he hired Simon Sinek to help him. And after months of struggling, he finally discovered his why. Not only did finding his why help him as a dentist, but it set him on a path to help and find others to help. Dr. Gary Sanchez, my guest today, was that dentist. Now, Gary is not only a dentist, he's an entrepreneur, an inventor, a speaker, an author, and the creator and founder of the Why Institute. He created a tool that in just 8 minutes can help you discover not only your why, but your how and what, and create your personal message for you. This tool has been used by hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. Thank you for being here, Dr. Gary Sanchez. I appreciate you making the time.
Well, Mark, thanks for having me. This is going to be exciting. These are my people we're talking to, I understand.
Yes, we're gonna share some great stuff. I'd love to start with a little bit more details as far as actually going from, okay, I know why is important. What the heck is mine? What happened? What's the story behind actually some of the meat of finding your why?
Well, Mark, I was a dentist, like you mentioned, and when I got out of dental school in 1988, I hate to even say that, but in 1988, the advice from the gurus of that time was build a great product and people will come. So I'm sure many of your listeners have heard that same thing, right? If I go out and do a great job, people will naturally and mysteriously find me. And that's what I did as a dentist. I spent 20 years reaching the highest levels you could go to in dentistry, building a beautiful practice, training a great team, buying all the technology, and I still blended in with everybody else who said, yeah, I'm a dentist too. And that drove me crazy. I'd never worked so hard at something and not gotten the results that I thought I would. And so that's when I was either going to quit or I was going to hire someone to help me. So I went out and I hired a coach, a guy by the name of John Assaraf. If you've ever seen the movie The Secret, you know who he is.
Yep.
Through him, I learned how to use the internet, how to do websites, drip campaigns, and SEO. So I could tell everybody all about me. But the only problem was, what am I going to say? And since I didn't know what to say to separate me from everyone else who did what I did, I just stayed quiet until one day I heard him interview Simon Sinek. Right. And Simon Sinek wrote the book Start With Why. He did the TED Talk you were talking about. And I thought, that's what I'm missing. I have a great what, but I don't know my why. So I became obsessed with discovering my why. That's after watching that TED Talk probably 20 or 30 times, reading his book 5 times. I said, I got to know my why. I got to know my why. So I called Simon. I said, Simon, I need you to help me discover my why. So he and I spent about 8 months together going back through my life looking for clues as to why I do what I do. And when I finally figured it out, my why is to find a better way and then share it. That's when my life started to make sense to me. Find a better way and share it. I've done that my entire life. I have a lot of patents and products and inventions that are better ways of doing things. And so in my dental practice, Mark, we stopped talking about what we do and we started talking about why we do what we do. Instead of talking about crowns, bridges, fillings, all that fun stuff, we started talking about what we believe, right? We believe that life is better when you have great teeth, that you can't have a good life with bad teeth. And as we kept talking about our why, that's when the right people started coming to me. And that's when my practice really took off. And as my practice took off, we started to get calls from other dentists that said, hey, can you help me do what you did? And so I went back and figured out a better way to do what Simon was trying to do to help people figure out their why. So instead of taking 6 or 8 or 10 months, I could help someone discover their why in about an hour. And I would sit down with people. And so I started doing this all over the world. I would bring people out of this audience on stage with me discover their why right in front of the audience, and then help them build their messaging, marketing, and branding right there on stage. And as I did this over and over and over, I started to see patterns and trends and similarities. And I figured out that there's only 9 different whys. And that was the most important thing that I figured out, 9 different whys. And all of us have all of them. But one of them is more dominant than the rest. And that's the one that becomes your why. And so as I figured all this out, I started to teach other people how to do what I was doing. And in doing that, I started to get more data. And then with that data, I developed the algorithm, and I built the why discovery in 2016 that just finds your why. And I gave it away to hundreds of thousands of people to test it. And then with that data in 2021, we launched the Why OS discovery, the Why operating system that finds your why, how, and what, and builds your message for you in about 8 minutes. And that's what you took. And that's what people take today, to find their why, how, and what. And so that was probably a longer answer than you wanted, but it kind of brings everybody up to speed on how this all happened. I didn't want to do this, Mark. This is not something I set out to do. I didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to make some software for people to find their why. Not a chance, right? I was a dentist, and my practice was doing really, really well. But I felt like I created something that was very special that people have been looking for forever. You know, like you said in the opening, 100 million people have watched that TED Talk, but very few have ever figured out what their why is. Now they can do it every time, accurately, very easily. They'll know their why, their how, and their what, and then they get to use it. So it goes from being a concept to reality. And then now we can teach them how to apply it. So the long answer was that.
That is an awesome answer. And I got to ask, what did those conversations on stage look like? Was it a certain set of questions? Did you was it touch and go and you kind of figured it out as it went? What did they look like?
So here's what I learned. Great question, because Simon and I, when we worked together, basically what we did is we went backwards in my life, all the way to when I was, as far back as I could remember, looking for patterns of where I found success. And my success always came around finding better ways and then sharing them. All the way back from when I was a little kid doing my chores and found a better way, when I was doing my cleaning the outside of our house, and all the different better ways that I figured out, and when I would share them. And that's the pattern we were looking for. And so what I realized is that if it's a pattern that repeats itself over and over, why do you have to go back to when you were a little kid to find that pattern? I could just take you, Mark, to the last 2 people you met, or the last 2 times you felt successful. Could it be today or yesterday? And look at those 2 and be able to evaluate that pattern. So I would bring somebody out on the stage, out of the audience on stage with me, and I would start with this question. Tell me a story about an interaction you had at work that made you feel successful. And the reason I would say story is because your why is housed in the limbic part of your brain. And the limbic part of the brain doesn't have the capacity for language. That's the feeling part of your brain. So you can't explain why you feel a certain way. You just do. Like, why do you love your significant other, your spouse? Well, I don't know why I love them. I just do. And then maybe you'll say, well, they do this or they don't do this, but you can't explain a feeling. The only way I could get to the why and access that part of their brain was through stories. And so they would tell me a story about an interaction they had with somebody that made them feel successful at work. And the whole thing about work was just because they could remember it. And then I would ask them to tell me a story about an interaction they had with somebody outside of work that made them feel successful. And I would see the pattern very quickly because I'd done it so many times. And that was their why. And then once I figured out their why, then we could take that and use it in their messaging and in their marketing and in their branding, which we could talk about here if you want.
Yeah.
But knowing your why is that critical first step in you understanding you.
What type of patterns did you look for and discover?
Well, they would tell me the same story, exact same story, but with just different people in it. So in my case, let's say it would be all around, well, in your case, can we use you as an example? Because your audience knows you.
Sure.
Okay, so Mark's why is to make sense of the complex and challenging. You probably hear him do it over and over and over. And with the questions that he's asking, it helps to uncover and make sense of the challenges. How he does that is by thinking differently and challenging the status quo. And ultimately, what Mark brings is a clear solution. So his why is make sense, his how is challenge, and his what is clarify. Make
Mhm.
sense of the complex and challenging by thinking outside the box to bring clarity. And so in your case, you would have told me a story over and over about how you helped someone solve their problem. So it'd
Mhm.
be, tell me an interaction about something that happened at work that made you feel successful. Well, this guy came in, he had a bunch of problems, he just couldn't solve them. It's very complex. I asked him a bunch of questions. I was able to help him understand it, work through it, and move forward. So I helped him solve his problem. I helped him move forward by helping him solve his problem. Okay, I have you tell me a story outside of work. You tell the same exact story. Somebody
Mhm.
came to you, had a problem, helped them solve it, helped them move forward. There's your pattern. So that's the old school way to do it. And you can still do it that way, but it takes somebody very trained to be able to hear and ask you the right questions to get to the right place. And so I've done more why discoveries than anybody in the world, Mark, and I was only about 70% accurate. So 30% of the time I got it wrong. And that's why, if everything you do, your passion, your purpose, your direction, your messaging, your marketing, your branding is all based on your why, pretty important to get it right. I got my own
Mhm.
wife's wrong. And so the software gets it right every single time. And that's why it's so critical. I couldn't scale. And if I was only 70% accurate, it was a challenge. So the software changed all that.
So how does the software do it? What can someone, and we'll talk about where to go to do this too. What can someone expect? Okay, you said 8 minutes, and it's this. What does the software do to elicit stories that it seems like it could be so tough to do because it, like you said, a trained person asking the right questions, and I'm imagining some intuition is involved. What it happens online to be able to get it so accurate?
That is a perfect question. And the reason that's a perfect question is because for your audience, I want you to think about this. If you have a process, you have something that you're doing that is different, unique, special, people come to you for it. But if you teach it to somebody else, maybe they'll take it and call it their own. Or you want to help more people and you want to scale with it. Figure out, mind map, if you will, the process that you went through to take someone on the journey to get them to the next stage. So let me tell you what I did. Um, I was telling a friend of mine, so there was a time when I thought, I'm the only one who can do this. I'm the only one who is doing it. I'm the only one who can do it. I've put in the 10,000 hours. I'm the expert. I'm the one that can recognize the patterns. And I'm the only one who can do it. I'm just that guy, right? But then a friend of mine asked me, he said, if that's true, Gary, how big of an impact are you going to have in your entire life?
Mhm.
I was like, you're right. Well, maybe it isn't just me. So I had to find a different way. So imagine that you are a painter and you get emotionally and mentally and physically involved with your painting. And you create this masterpiece up on the wall. It takes you months and months and months of painting this. Now you've got this masterpiece. Well, once it's up on the wall, there's other ways now to get to that masterpiece that don't require all that extra emotional, mental connection. I could do paint by numbers and create this. I could use a camera and break it down and create an outline and get to this picture painting.
Mhm.
That's what happened with me. Once I knew there were 9 different whys, I figured out a different way to get to the 9 whys that didn't require stories, that didn't require listening and interpreting stories, because I had done so many of them and had so much data. I knew what every single one of those whys would say, the words they use. And so the YOS discovery is all based on things people with each of those whys would say. Meaning, are you more likely to say this or this?
Mm.
In our case, so my why is better way and your why is make sense. So how you could separate that, are you more likely to feel successful because you found a better way or because you were help someone solve their problem? Oh, it's about solving the problem for you. For me, it's about finding a better way. So I used all the things that they said as the way to figure out which one was their why versus having to listen to all the stories. And it turned out to be way more accurate, didn't require, again, listening to all these different stories and trying to interpret them. So it became very, very accurate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What kind of patterns did you see over the years, whether it was what you saw on stage or what you put into the software? What are some examples of common patterns that you saw that led people to their why?
Oftentimes, there was something that happened to them in their childhood. For example, with your why, with the why of makes sense, we would see that people with your why often had to grow up very fast. Something happened in their life when they were young, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, where they had to almost be the adult. Maybe it was a parent who was an alcoholic or something, and they didn't know when that parent was coming home what they were going to run into, and they had to solve problems quickly. They had to be on their feet, be able to handle things coming their way very rapidly. They had to become the adult, or maybe they had to take care of their brothers and sisters. I don't know if that's played out in your life, but
Mhm.
maybe you're welcome to elaborate on that. But it's a very common thing that we see with people with the mind makes sense. And that's why you're so dang good at it. You've always been solving problems from the time you were very, very young. You have a whole catalog of problems that you solve. So you get to places quick. If you and I were having, if I had a problem and I brought it to you, you'd probably say, okay, tell me about it. Tell me about it. Okay, I got it. Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? You're there quick, way faster than everybody else. And you almost have to dumb yourself down to let the rest of us catch up. Does that feel pretty accurate?
Very accurate down to their childhood. Yes, definitely.
Yes. And so I would hear the same story over and over and over with somebody with the why of trust. One of the whys is trust. That person had their trust broken. I was working with this big venture capital for the largest venture capital firm in the US. They're in Baltimore. And I had dinner the night before with the CEO and some of his executive team. And so we were talking his why. We knew his why was trust. And so, we started talking about some of the things that happen with people that have the why of trust, that somebody in their life when they were young broke their trust. And I said, did that happen with you? And he starts getting very teary eyed. And he said, yeah. He said, my mother committed suicide when I was 5 years old and she left me
Mm.
alone. And my dad was so busy building his company that I was spent most of my time alone. And I learned that I couldn't trust anybody. And so the same stories come out over and over with each of the whys.
So when the stories come out and you figure out the why, can you talk a little bit about the what and the how?
Yeah, the how and the what. So
The how and the
um,
what, yes.
the how and the what. Everybody talks about why. Got to know your why. Got to know your why. You hear Simon Sinek talk about it. You hear Tony Robbins. You hear Eric Thomas. You hear Michael Hyatt. You hear all these gurus talk about you got to know your why, right? Mark Twain says two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. Just as important, though, is your how and your what. How you bring your why to life. And then your what is ultimately what people can count on from you. So my why is to find a better way and share it. And if that's all you knew about me, you would know that he's a guy that's always looking to find a better way, right? He goes to bed thinking about a better way and he wakes up thinking about a better way and he can't turn it off and he didn't choose it.
Hmm.
So you would know that if I'm talking to you about something, it's probably a better way, or I wouldn't talk about it. I can't talk about something unless it's a better way. But just as important is my how. How I do that is by making things clear and understandable, first for myself and then for others. And then ultimately, what I bring is a simple solution. I simplify things. I make them doable so that you can actually use it. So my why is better way, my how is clarify, and my what is simplify. And now you know an awful lot more about me than just what my why is. And that helps you in so many different ways. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs here. When you know your why, how, and what, that is where your messaging comes from for your website. That's why I would choose you. If you're looking for a better way brought to you in a clear, made clear and brought to you in a simple way,
Hmm.
I am your guy. If that's not what you're looking for, I'm not your guy. And the same thing with you. Your messaging, your marketing, your branding all comes from your why, how, and what. It's why I would choose you. It's how you go about doing things, and it's ultimately what I can count on from you. So in Mark's case, if you want help solving your problems and you want to look at it differently and come up with a clear solution, Mark's your guy. Does that feel right?
That feels absolutely right. And could you give a few examples of branding? Because that's a a big topic, and it sounds like with what you're touching on, I haven't heard this angle or this type of discussion around branding with those three things.
This, okay. Let me talk about some ways that you can use the YOS, but then I'll get into branding. So let me just lay out a few things for everybody. First of all, once you know your YOS, you now have the words to clearly articulate to the world who you are. That in itself is priceless because most people have no idea who they are or why someone should choose them. If you can't say it, you don't know it, and it's not useful. When you can say it is when it becomes useful for you. And that's why somebody should choose you. Now, how that helps you is to figure out what to do with your life. If you're not sure where your passion or your purpose or your direction is, if you know your why, how, and what, if what you choose to do with your life is in line with your why, your how, and your what, you will love what you do. You will have passion for what you do. And passion is the fuel that gives you the energy to pursue your dreams. Without passion, you will quit. You will run out of energy. So if we put Mark in a place where he gets to solve problems by getting people to think or see things differently and come up with a clear path, a clear solution, well, will you love doing that, Mark?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You'd do it all day long for free if you could. You
Exactly.
probably have.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the same thing with every one of you listening. If you know your YOS and you look at what you're currently doing and it's not in alignment, you can still do it, but you just got to know you'll run out of energy. Pick something where you get to live it and you will love it. And so then it's now you've picked what you love to do. Now you want to let other people know what it is you're doing and why they should choose you. Well, that's where your why, how, and what become your message. The better able you are to articulate why you do what you do, or your YOS, your Y operating system, your why, how, and
Mhm.
what, the more you will attract those people that believe what you believe, that are looking for you. So if you tell people, I believe that success happens when I solve complex and challenging problems. How I do that is by getting them to think differently and push the limits, to think outside the box. But ultimately, what I deliver is a clear solution and a clear path to get results. If that's what they're looking for, you are that guy. If you don't tell them that, how are they ever going to know? You then have to rely on hope. Well, I sure hope I say something they like. I sure hope
Mhm.
they see that in with me. I sure hope I get to spend enough time with them so they see who I am. Now, if you just say it, then the right people will raise their hand and say, "Man, that's what I'm looking for. That's exactly what I'm looking for. You're my guy," and you'll
Well,
love doing it. Does that make sense?
that makes perfect sense. And tell me if I'm on point. It sounds like what you're also saying is the people that aren't whatever you want to use, qualified prospects, potential, whatever, partners, business partners, whatever it might be. It sounds like by sharing that, it also gets the people who would be the wrong people to interact with to be able to say, no, that's not me. Right out of the gates, you're pre-qualifying the wrong people.
How many people do you think that are listening have ever had a bad client?
Everyone.
Right. Everyone. What's that like? It's horrible. Well, what a bad client is somebody who doesn't believe what you believe. But if you don't ever tell them what it is you believe, how are they going to know? You have to spend enough time together to kind of figure it out. And then once you figure out they're the wrong one, you got to figure out how the heck do we get away from each other? And that in itself can be a pain. Typically is. Refund them their money, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can figure that out up front, so much more valuable. But the other thing that happens, okay, so now you know your YOS, you know you're living your passion, you've got your messaging and your marketing now that's authentic to you, that's real, and you feel great saying it because you know that's exactly who you are and what you're looking for. Now, once you know the YOS of your prospect, you'll know exactly how to present your product or your service or your cause in a way where it's valuable to them and important to them. It kind of demystifies who you're talking to. So it becomes the world's best prospecting tool. I don't meet with anybody online, in person, unless I know their YOS. What are we going to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going to go with that? I don't, what sport team do you like? Where do you live? All those things. Instead of like, let's just get down to why we're on this dang call or why we're meeting. So I'll give you an example. And this you'll crack up with because this guy had your why. This was before I made it a point to won't meet with anybody. So I'm meeting with this guy. He's the CEO of a big engineering firm and does a lot of government contracts. And we're meeting at Starbucks. And I get there and I look at my phone. I realize he hasn't taken the YOS Discovery yet. So his name is Simon. Just by chance, his name is Simon.
I was going to say, wait, are you not saying the last name intentionally?
Different Simon. And we sit down and he starts telling me all about the wonderful things that he's done and his business and how he's so smart and he's figured out all these problems and blah, blah, blah. He goes on and on and on. And, really puffing his chest up. And that's when I said, Simon, you haven't discovered your YOS yet, have you? And he's like, no, I didn't have time. And I said, all right, I'm going to send it to you right now. Go sit in the corner over there, go discover it, and then come back. So 8 minutes later, he comes back and he has your why. We'll just deal with the why for now. He has your why of make sense. So right away, I know so much about him. I know that he is great at solving problems. I know he's very fast on his feet. I know he has a very high capacity. I know that he can take on lots and lots of stuff and handle it very, very well. But I also know that he's so good at solving problems that the people around him get disempowered because why am I going to spend my time doing it? I'll just give it over to Simon. He'll figure it out way better, way faster, way quicker, way easier than I can do it. And so I said all those things to him. I said, Simon, what this tells me is you're great at solving problems. What I just said. And I said, but here's some of the challenges that come with it. You're so good at it that everybody ends up watching you. They're like, why am I going to do it? I'm going to give it over to Simon. He'll do it. He's going to do it better. So you end up becoming the bottleneck to the growth of your company. Your capacity is the limiting factor to your growth. And he said, how did you know that? And I said, it's very predictable. And he's like, that's exactly what's going on. I can't grow. And I said, and you have a hard time trusting other people, don't you? Because you can do it better than they can and faster. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, that's true. I don't like to give it to anybody else because it's just going to end up back on my plate, not done very well, to my standards. And I said, and that's the challenge that you're running into. You need a great second in command. You need to be taken out of that equation and put into more of a board of directors. And you need a CEO that can build the team out. And he's like, that's exactly what's going on.
Wow.
And so does that make sense? So
yeah.
All the puffing of his chest and all that goes away because he knows that I know exactly what's going on. And now we can have a real conversation.
So without the software, Is there a way in a discussion or questions to ask to help discover someone else's YOS while you're talking to them, even if it's just part of the why? Because it's so important, but I would imagine that's not a normal conversation. Like you said, it's sports teams and where do you live and blah, 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 and about my business. How can you at least discover an inkling of somebody else's YOS?
Well, each one of them, if you know the nine whys really well, it's very hard to be honest. And I obviously the expert on this, and I can't even do it. But there are, if you knew the nine whys, let me just, if those of you listening, if you have a piece of paper and a pencil, I'm going to just tell you the nine whys real quick, so you have them. The first why is contribute. Contribute. So write down contribute. To contribute to a greater cause, add value, have an impact in the lives of others. These are people that want to help. They don't have to be the focus, but they want to contribute in a meaningful way. They use their time, their money, their energy to push other people forward. Okay, the second why is trust. To create relationships based upon trust. To be the trusted source, to be the one that, if I could trust you and you can trust me, sky's the limit. But if you break their trust, you'll get cut off. Third why is make sense, which is Mark's. To make sense of the complex and challenging. And so these are great problem solvers, like we talked about. They can very quickly get to the solution and help you move forward. Fourth why is my why, which is better way. We're always looking to improve things, innovate things. We're rarely satisfied, always trying to make things better. Fifth why is right way. These are structure, process, systems people to do things the right way in order to get results. The sixth why is challenge, which is your how, to challenge the status quo and think differently. These are people that push the limit, think outside the box, imagine the extraordinary. Steve Jobs, Herb Kelleher, Richard Branson. The seventh why is mastery. These are people that like depth, breadth, detail, take the simple and make it complex by diving in really deep. The eighth why is clarify, which is your what. These are in my how, which are make things clear, first for themselves, then clear for others. They're really good at asking questions, and they ask a lot of them in order to get clear for themselves and make it clear for others, right? And then the last why is simplify, decrease complexity, decrease the number of steps. They want things direct, to the point. Don't beat around the bush. Don't give me the fluff. Give me bullet points. Those are the nine whys. Now, the more you know those, you can kind of start to pick out things. So, for example, if their why is contribute, they're going to be pretty smiley, amiable, wanting to say yes, wanting to help. Trust, they're going to be a little bit more reserved. They don't want to damage the relationship. They're great at keeping secrets. Makes sense? They're a little bit more outgoing. They're going to solve the problem. What's your problem? What's your problem? Give me the problem. I can solve the problem. Right? Better way. We're always looking to improve things. We're rarely satisfied. Like, always wanting to know what's the best thing on the menu. Like, what's the best way to get there? What's the best car to buy? What's the best this? Right way. They're very properly dressed. Their hair's perfect. Their shoes are perfect. They're just really hold themselves the right way. Challenge, they could have the purple hair. They don't follow any rules. They think outside the box. They're fun, exciting, different. Then mastery. They are fun to talk to because they have a lot of knowledge, like super, super deep knowledge about whatever they're interested in. And then clarify, they're going to ask a lot of questions, like you're really good at it. And then the last one is simplify. They're going to want things just direct to the point. They're going to be a little bit more serious, a little more stern, like, just tell me what you're trying to say. What are you getting at here? Like, give me the bullet points. Just bottom line it. Those are the simplify. So you can kind of pick those out, and hopefully that was helpful for your group. But the easiest thing is just find their YOS, and then you know.
Well, when you find a common ground, maybe not necessarily their entire YOS, of course, but you get to know somebody, you can delve into a little bit about why they do what they do, learn a little bit about them. It's on your website, and it's one of the bigger sections that I saw we believe, we don't believe. Could you really unpack and drive home the importance of shared beliefs and why that is so important to you?
Yeah, and the reason beliefs are so important is because it gives the people that are you're talking to the ability to raise their hand and just say, that's what I believe too. And if we believe the same thing, we have that instant connection. You're my guy. I get, we don't have to have the same why. We just have to believe the same thing. So if you, Mark, believe that success happens when we always find a better way, you're always about, you believe in finding better ways too, you and I have some great conversations. Right. But if you don't believe that, you're like, no, I don't believe that. I believe in just doing the same thing over and over until you're just really, really good at it. And I don't want to change it because it's working. But then we're not going to have a great conversation. Just before this, before I got on here, I was on talking to another gentleman who's has a coach organization, and he is very happy with the way things are going for his company. He's getting great results. He likes the way things are going. Do you think he's going to be excited about a better way?
Probably not.
No. He's like, I'm already doing great. I already like it. I'm already happy. I'm happy. I don't want a better way. We're getting what we want. So we don't believe the same thing. It wasn't a great connection. That's okay. Doesn't mean one person's good or bad. It's just like we don't see eye to eye, but we know it right away. When I tell him my why is about finding a better way, he's like, I'm not looking for a better way. Perfect. Then we don't need to go there. Imagine if I'd have tried to work with him. What would that be like?
It would have worked out. It would have just crashed and burned.
Crash and burn. And now we're both pissed off at each other, and you're such a this and you're such a that, and why this and why that. Right. So we know that now. And then as your company grows and you add partners or people to your organization, you'll know which ones to bring in to help you build and scale, because you'll build it based on their why, how, and what. Put people in a place where they love what they do and they'll love doing it. Put them in a place where they can do it, but they don't love it. They run out of energy. That's not what you want. You want somebody that would do it for free if they could. Those are the best people to work with.
So it sounds like, if I hear you right, tell me if I'm on point. The YOS becomes a blueprint for successful conversations, whether you're talking about networking or team building within an organization.
Yes. It solves so many problems. There's a lot of great books out there that talk about, let's go good to great. Good to great. Put the right person on the bus and in the right seat. Hey, that sounds wonderful. How do you do it? Right? You hire them and you place them, and then you go in a back room and you start to pray, and you hope you pick the right one. Right?
Yep.
And only time will tell. Well, now you can know in advance. Or parents telling their kids, find your passion. Well, thanks, mom. Thanks, dad. Well, how do I do that? I don't know, but just go find your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all you're going to help me with? Wow, you're supposed to live your passion. Well, now you know how to help someone find their passion. If what they do is in line with their YOS, they'll love what they do. That's where the passion comes from.
And like you said, that's where the drive comes from too.
The internal drive. Yeah. And wanting to do it and thinking about it, obsessing about it, right? You've seen people that are good at or are able to do something. Well, let's take you, for example. We'll go back to you because your audience knows you. You're probably pretty good with numbers.
Yeah.
But so you come to my business and fill out the resume, and you put on there, I'm good with numbers. Hey, wonderful. I got my new bookkeeper. Mark is going to be my new bookkeeper. How are you going to like being a bookkeeper?
Oh, just the thought of it makes me cringe. I mean, like, wow, no way.
And I know that with the why of challenge. I know that would make sense because it's not going to be a problem for you for very long. But I also know it for challenge because you don't want to follow the rules. You don't want to follow the process. You're not going to do it the same way every day.
Mm-mm.
Not a chance in hell that's what you want to do. But according to your resume, you're good with numbers. So you should be a good bookkeeper. And I
That's
know,
just scary.
I know.
Freaking scary.
hmm So I know that if I bring you in, well, how long are you going to have energy for being my bookkeeper?
My God, I wouldn't make it to a year, probably not even 6 months.
Exactly. And then you start causing trouble and and you hate it and we hate it and you don't want to do it. Why go there? Why go there when you don't have to? And now that I know your YOS, I know that is not in your wheelhouse at all.
No.
If that's the only thing that was available, you could do it short term and you could do it really, really well short term. But short term could be like 2 days. And then you're like, nah,
That's what I'm thinking.
yeah, 2 days. And then you're like, no, I'm out. So it's very helpful in getting the right people around you. And whether this is your, people you work with, your own bookkeeper, your accountant, people outside of your business, if you're a solopreneur, or as you grow, you're going to need more people to help you. Find the right ones right away. Saves you a ton of money. Ton of money. Have you ever had the wrong employee before, Mark?
I've had the wrong contractors.
There you go. Wrong contractors. How did that work out?
What you mentioned before, blame on both sides of the fence, not a good situation. My God, what are they going to say about me? They live in the same city. It's a small networking world, and it just becomes so much stress. And what if this,
Yeah.
what if, and it's like, it was never even worth trying to have a relationship.
But you don't know it based on what they're capable of doing.
Mm-mm.
But now, if you knew their YOS, you would know right away, you know what? This is not going to work. This is not the right fit. So just helps you solve a lot of problems.
Well, it sounds like it, and we've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. With everything we talked about, whether it's reinforcing something that you said or mentioning something new, someone listening or watching is like, okay, I get it. I got to find my why and then leverage my why. If you were to say, if nothing else, do this one thing to get going. If nothing else, above all, just at least do this and your life will be better. What would you tell them to do?
Make a commitment to figure out who you are. And it doesn't have to be the YOS. It doesn't just have to be what I told you. If you have another way that you feel is better for you, do it. Just make the decision. Okay, the first step in peak performance, at performing at the highest level in anything you do, business, relationships, whatever it is, the first step is self-awareness. The first step in self-awareness, from my perspective, is knowing what your why is. But if you have another way, it doesn't matter. Just figure out who you are so then you can get on the right path. You can perform at the highest level and you can love what you do. It all starts when you know you.
This has been excellent. And if people want to find you online or any tests, anything like that, what's the best place or places to go to get more information about you?
Yeah, just go to whyinstitute.com, whyinstitute.com, and it'll all be there for you. And I'm going to give your audience if you use the code podcast50, you'll get it at half price. It's only $97 anyways, but you'll get it at half price if you use the code podcast50, and it'll find your why, your how, and your what, and build your message for you so that, man, then you're off to the races. Things become so much easier for you. Well, let me take that back. Let me say that when you find your YOS, it could make life much easier for you. It could make life more challenging for you. I could have just stayed a dentist. I had it wired. I was working 3 days a week. I was making a lot of money. My practice was going great, but it wasn't fulfilling. Switching directions. What does a dentist know about creating software, bringing software to the world, speaking on stages? What? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So did it make my life easier? No. But has it made it more fulfilling? Yes. Have I loved every second of it? Yes. Do I have unlimited passion for it? Yes. Way more fun. So Could it make it in the short term more challenging? Yes. Will it make it more fulfilling in the long run? Definitely. So it all starts when you know you.
That is amazing. Thank you so much again for your time, Dr. Gary. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Great questions, great conversation.
Thank you. And scene. Thank you for tuning into the Idea Climbing radio show today. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something great out of it that you can take into your own life and use to be better in your own life. If you want more great shows like this, go to 216thenet.com. You want to see more of my interviews, radio show, and podcast? Go to markjcartertv.com. Again, that's markjcartertv.com and 216thenet.com.